உணர்ந்தோதற்கு அறியவன் நிலவுலாவிய நீர்மலிவேணியன் அருகில் சோதியன் அம்பலத்து ஆடுவான் மலர்ந்திடம்படி வாழ்த்தி வணங்குவான். உணர்ந்தோதற்கு அறியவன் நிலவுலாவிய நீர்மலிவேணியன் அருகில் சோதியன் அம்பலத்து ஆடுவான் மலர்ந்திடம்படி வாழ்த்தி வணங்குவான்.
Hi everyone, I am pleased to talk to you about our college Thiru Santhalingadigalar Arts, Science and Tamil College, affiliated under Bharatiyar University and accredited by INAC with B grade. It is located near Perur Pattiswarar Temple, Coimbatore. Our college offered many courses like BA, Tamil and English. I am pleased to talk to you about our college Thiru Santhalingadigalar Arts, Science and Tamil College, affiliated under Bharatiyar University and accredited by INAC with B grade. It is located near Perur Pattiswarar Temple, Coimbatore. Our college offered many courses like BA, Tamil and English. I am pleased MCom, MSc Computer Science, MPhil and PhD. Now the registration is open for the next academic year, and a great offer during this pandemic is the first semester fees is absolutely free in this academic year. So please make use of it, my dear students. Thank you. MCom, MSc Computer Science, MPhil and PhD.
Dr. Niti sir.
Madam?
Sir, Dr. Niti sir வந்துட்டாருங்களா?
வந்துட்டார் மேடம்.
எந்த நேம்ல இருக்காருங்க சார்? Galaxy J2?
இல்ல மேடம், டாக்டர் நிதி. உள்ள வந்து
அதான்
செக்
சார்.
பண்ணிட்டாரு.
எஸ், டாக்டர் கே.
டாக்டர் நிதி.
Thank you ma, thank you. Okay.
உள்ள தான் இருக்கு. மேடம், shall we start?
Yes sir. Kailvali, it's time to start ma.
Okay, ma'am. I know there is a proverb which that says to err is human, but a human error is nothing to what a computer can do if it tries. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Kalvali from Tavathiru Sandaling Adigalar Arts Science and Tamil College. It's my pleasure to welcome you here this evening. I would like to thank you for your joining us today's webinar. Today we are presenting a computer and communication, conducting from Computer Science Department. Let's continue with a song of prayer before we continue the program. It's my pleasure to welcome you here this evening. I would like to thank you for your joining us today's webinar. Today we are presenting a computer and communication, conducting from Computer Science Department. Let's continue with a song of prayer before we continue the program. It's my pleasure to welcome you here this evening. I would like to thank you for your joining us today's webinar. Today we are presenting computer and communication, conducting from Computer Science Department. Let's continue with a song of prayer before we continue the program. It's my pleasure to welcome you here. I would like to thank you for your joining us today's webinar. Today we are presenting communication, conducting from Computer Science Department. Let's continue with a song of prayer before we continue. Thank you. It's our pleasure to invite our guest to go straight along. I ask Mrs. Nadapriya to give you as an address of welcome.
Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Our Honorable College Management has been conducting the College Management has been conducting webinars in different aspects for the past 3 months with the motive of sharing valuable knowledge and increasing awareness among the people. I welcome our Swamiji who guide us and inspire us with his knowledge. He is the one who motivated us to conduct this webinar and has supported us throughout the journey. Welcome, Swamiji. I would like to introduce today's presenter, Dr. Niti from the United States of America, who is here to share his valuable knowledge on computing and communication. Welcome, sir. I welcome the principal, HOD, and staff members who have been working hard to make this event a success. I also welcome the students and participants who are here to attend this session. I hope you all find this session informative and helpful. Now, let me give you a short note about our Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Niti. Education. Dr. Niti received his undergraduate BA degree in Electrical and Electronic Engineering from PSG Technology and a master degree in Computer Science from Guindy Engineering College with distinction. He obtained his PhD in Computer Science for Colorado State University, USA in 1992. His dissertation is in the area of neural networks. Work. His work experiences include ad hoc scientist for aeronautical development establishment India, As software engineer at C.India, where was part of design and development of software for a new digital switching system in India. After his PhD, he is working as research scientist first at Belcore for 9 years and now at Bell Labs, currently part of Nokia since 2001. His research spans several areas. At Belcore, application of neural networks for software reliability models, radar signal detection, recommendation system for movies, software defect classification, etc. in 90s and early 2000. At Bell Labs, system for optional core network design and optical switching systems, wireless network performance monitoring systems for 3G and LTE. Recently, he was involved in the design that is being used in Nokia, and currently he is again back into machine learning for face detection and tracking. Dr. Nithi has published extensively in several leading journals, in editing books and international conference, and holds several patents. Dr. Nithi's other interests include actively promoting Tulhapiyam for learning Tamil worldwide via Ulaga Tulhapiyam Mandram. He is also developed and maintains the website called tulhapiyam.org for Ulaga Tulhapiyam Mandram and is a sailor in Ulaga Tulhapiyam Mandram. We are proud to have you today, sir. Once again, I welcome you all.
Good evening. Can I start?
Thank you, ma'am, for giving us more details of him. Now I am requesting our Swamiji to give a speech of devotions.
Oh, sorry.
திருச்சிற்றம்பலம். எல்லாமுடையான் குருவாகி இங்கு எமது அல்லல்லறுத்தான் என்றுந்தீபர அவன் தாள் தொழுவாம் என்றுந்தீபர. போற்றுதலுக்கும் நாளும் நம்மை நன்னெறிப்படுத்தலுக்கும் உரிய அருள்மிகு அம்பலவான பெருமான் ஆலமர் செல்வர் அம்மையப்பருடைய இன்னருளாலும் உயிர்க்கு துணையாக திகழ்ந்து கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய சமயக்குறவர்கள், திருமுறை ஆசிரியர்கள், நாயன்மார்கள், சந்தானக்குறவர்கள், ஆதீனக்குறவர்கள், திருவள்ளுவர் தொல்காப்பியராதிய சான்றோர் பெருமக்களுடைய நல்லருளாலும் திருக்கைலாய பரம்பரை மெய்கண்ட சந்தானம் பேரூர் ஆதீனம் ஆதிகுருவோடு சாந்தலிங்க பெருமானுடைய தன்னருளாலும் தெய்வ திருப்பெருந்திரு கைலை குருமணி தமிழர் வழிபாட்டு தந்தை 24ஆம் குருமகா சன்னிதானங்களுடைய பொன்னார் திருவடி குருவர்களாலும் எல்லோரும் எல்லா நலங்களும் பெற்று வையத்துள் வாழ்வாங்கு வாழ வேண்டும் என்று சொல்லி வாழ்த்தி மகிழ்கின்றோம். மேலை சிதம்பரமா மிக்கவகள் பேரூரில் சுந்தரர் எழுந்தள்ளிய போது இங்கே எம்பெருமான் எளிவந்த பிரானாக இருந்து உழவனாக உழைத்தியாக இருந்து வயலிலே உழைக்கக்கூடிய உன்னதமான பணியை செய்து உழைப்பின் பெருமையை உலகுக்கு காட்டினார். இங்கே இருந்து சுந்தரர் தில்லைக்கு சென்ற போது பேரூரிலே இருக்கக்கூடிய இந்த பெருமானுடைய காட்சியை தில்லையிலே கண்டார். பேரூரற் பெருமானை புலியூர் சிற்றம்பலத்தே பெற்றாமென்றே என்று சொல்லி அவர் குறிப்பிடுவார். அத்தகைய சிறப்பு வாய்ந்தது நம்முடைய பேரூர். இத்தகைய பேரூரிலே அதன் குணக்குந்திய திசையில் நற்கோயில் அணிய மடமும் செய்து அதன்கண் குணக்குன்றாய் நின்று வருவார்க்கு அருள் புரிந்தவர் சாந்தலிங்க பெருமான். அந்த சாந்தலிங்க பெருமானுடைய திருவருளாலே நல்லருளாலே அவருடைய திருப்பெயராலே தொடங்க பெற்ற கல்லூரி நம்முடைய கல்லூரி 1953 இருந்து தமிழ் பணியையும் கல்வி பணியையும் தொடர்ந்து ஆற்றி வருகின்றது. இந்த நல்ல கல்லூரியிலே கடந்த ஒரு மாதத்திற்கு மேலாக இங்கே தொடர்ந்து இணைய வகுப்புகள் நடைபெற்று வருகின்றன. சுமார் 2 மாதங்களாகவே இணைய வகுப்புகள் நடைபெற்று வருகின்றன. அந்த வகையிலே இன்று கணினித்துறை சார்பாக நடைபெறக்கூடிய கம்யூனிட்டி அண்ட் கம்யூனிகேஷன் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய தலைப்பிலே உரையாற்றுவதற்காக வந்திருக்கக்கூடிய பேரன்பிற்கும் பாராட்டுதலுக்கும் உரிய முனைவர் நிதி ஐயா அவர்களுக்கும் கல்லூருடைய முதல்வர், துறைத் தலைவர்கள், பேராசிரியர் பெருமக்கள், மாணவ செல்வங்கள், சிறப்பு நோக்கர்களாக இங்கே கலந்து சிறப்பித்துக் கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய அன்பர்கள் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய அனைவருக்கும் நம்முடைய உலங்கணிந்த வாழ்த்துக்களை தெரிவித்துக் கொள்கின்றோம். கணினித்துறை இப்பொழுது வளர்ந்து வரக்கூடிய துறை. இறைவனை சொல்லுகின்ற போது இறைவன் எங்கும் இருக்கிறான் என்று சொல்வதைப் போல கணினித்துறை என்று சொல்லக்கூடியது எல்லா துறையிலேயும் ஊடுருவி இருக்கின்றது. அந்த வகையிலே அந்த கணினித்துறையிலே சிறந்த முறையிலே இருக்கக்கூடிய அறிஞர்களை எல்லாம் அழைத்து தொடர்ந்து நம்முடைய கணிப்பொறித்துறை பல அறிஞர்களை கொண்டு தொடர் வகுப்புகளை நடத்தி வருகின்றது. இன்றைய இந்த நல்ல இனிய வகுப்புக்கு நம்முடைய அன்பான அழைப்பினை ஏற்று இங்கே வருகை புரிந்திருக்கக்கூடியவர்கள் நம்முடைய முனைவர் நிதி ஐயா அவர்கள். கேடில் விளைச்செல்வம் கல்வி என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய வகையிலே அந்த கல்வியை கசடர கற்று அந்த தொட்டனைத்தூர் மணற்கேந்தி கேணியைப் போல அறிவினை வளப்படுத்தி கொண்டு பள்ளிகளிலேயும் கல்லூரிகளிலேயும் நல்ல முதலிடத்தை தக்க வைத்து பல்வேறு வகையான விருதுகளை பெற்ற பெருமைக்குரியவர். கொங்கேல் தரங்களிலே மூவராலும் பாடப்பெற்றதாக இருக்கக்கூடிய பெருமைக்குரியது திரு பாண்டி கொடுமுடி என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய கொடுமுடி. அந்த கொடுமுடிக்கு அருகிலே இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு ஊரிலே பிறந்து இன்று அமெரிக்க நாட்டினுடைய சிறந்த பகுதியாக இருக்கக்கூடிய நியூஜெர்சி பகுதியிலே சிறப்பான முறையிலே தொண்டாற்றி கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடியவர்கள். நோக்கியா வெல் என்று சொல்லக்கூடியதாக இருக்கக்கூடிய அந்த நிறுவனத்திலே ரிசர்ச் சயின்டிஸ்ட் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய ஆராய்ச்சி அறிவியலாளராக பணியாற்றி கொண்டிருக்கின்றார். அத்தகையவர் இன்று நமக்கு இந்த கம்ப்யூட்டிங் அண்ட் கம்யூனிகேஷன் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய ஒரு அருமையான நிகழ்ச்சியை வழங்கி இருப்பது மிகவும் நமக்கு மகிழ்வுக்குரியது. இது அவர் செய்யக்கூடிய தொழில் சார்ந்ததாக இருக்கக்கூடிய நிலையிலே அவர் செய்வது. இதற்கு மேலாக இவருடைய சிந்தனை விரிந்திருக்கின்றது. பாரதியார் சொல்லுகின்ற போது சொல்லுவார், மேல்நாட்டு சாத்திரங்கள் தமிழ் மொழியில் பெயர்த்தல் வேண்டும் என்று. அவருடைய காலத்திலே மேலை நாட்டிலே குறிப்பா ஐரோப்பா நாடுகளிலே நிறைய அறிஞர் மக்களுடைய கருத்துக்கள் இருந்தன. அவையெல்லாம் நம்முடைய நாட்டுக்கு வர வேண்டும் என்று சொல்லி அவர் விரும்பினார். ஆனால் இப்பொழுது இருக்கக்கூடிய சூழல் மாறி இருக்கின்றது. என்ன என்றால், நாம் கால்டுவெல் என்று சொல்லக்கூடியவரை கேள்விப்பட்டிருப்போம். அவர் திராவிட மொழிகளுடைய ஒப்பாய்வு என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய அந்த நூலை அருமையான முறையிலே நமக்கு தந்திருக்கின்றார். ஆனால் என்ன வருத்தம் என்று சொன்னால், அவருக்கு தொல்காப்பியம் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய நூல் இருப்பதே நீண்ட காலமாக அவருக்கு தெரியவில்லை. அந்த தொல்காப்பியத்தை பற்றி அவர்கள் அறியாமலேயே தொல்காப்பியம் நம்முடைய தமிழகத்தினுடைய சிறமையை, தமிழனுடைய சிறப்பை அவர் சொல்லி இருக்கின்றார். தமிழ்நாட்டுக்கே தமிழ்நாட்டிலேயே தொண்டாற்றியவர்களுக்கே தொல்காப்பியத்தினுடைய பெருமையை தெரிய முடியாத அளவுக்கு நம்முடைய இலக்கியங்கள் எல்லாம் விரிவான முறையிலே கொண்டு சேர்க்கப்படவில்லை. அதே போல மேக்ஸ் முல்லரை பற்றி சொல்லுவார்கள். அவர்கள் வடமொழியில் இருக்கக்கூடிய மறைகளை எல்லாம் உமிடதங்களை எல்லாம் மொழிபெயர்த்தவர். சில காலம் கழித்து நம்முடைய சைவ சித்தாந்தத்தையும் நம்முடைய நாட்டிலே இருக்கக்கூடிய இலக்கணங்களையும் பற்றி கேள்விப்பட்ட போது அவர் சொன்னார், இவற்றை பற்றி எனக்கு முதலிலே தெரியவில்லை, தெரிந்திருந்தால் இவற்றை முதலாவதாக எடுத்துக்கொண்டு நான் கொண்டாற்றி இருப்பேன் என்று சொல்லுவார். அப்படி நம்ம நாட்டில் இருக்கக்கூடிய இலக்கணங்கள், இலக்கியங்கள், தத்துவங்கள் போன்றவை அயல்நாட்டிற்கு கொண்டு சேர்க்கப்படாமல் இருக்கின்றன. அதை கொண்டு சேர்க்க வேண்டும் என்கின்ற அடிப்படையிலே திரைக்கடலோடியும் திரவியம் தேடும் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய வகையிலே இல்லாமல் திரைக்கடலோடியும் தீந்தமிழ் வளர்க்க வேண்டும் என்கின்ற நோக்கத்தோடு தொண்டாற்றி கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய அறிஞர்கள் பலர். அந்த வகையிலே தொல்காப்பியர் ஆண்டை நாம் கொண்டாடுகின்றோம். இன்று தொல்காப்பியர் ஆண்டு 2730 என்று நாம் 1 என்று சொல்லுகின்றோம். அந்த தொல்காப்பியருடைய பெயராலே உலக தொல்காப்பியர் மன்றம் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய ஒரு மன்றத்தை அமைத்து தொல்காப்பியருடைய சிந்தனைகளை அங்கு கொண்டு சேர்க்கின்றார். நாம் மறுபுறத்தை பற்றி நாம் சிந்திக்க வேண்டும். இங்கே நிறைய ஒரு காலத்திலே பட்டப்படிப்பிலேயே தொல்காப்பியம் படித்தோம். அதற்கடுத்து அதெல்லாம் பட்டப்படிப்பிலே போதா வேண்டியதில்லை என்று சொல்லி முதுகலை படிப்பு கொண்டு போனார்கள். இப்பொழுது முதுகலை படிப்பிலேயும் கூட எடுத்து விட்ட ஒரு சூழலிலே அங்கே இருக்கக்கூடிய அறிவியல் அறிஞர்கள், கணினித்துறை வல்லார்கள், மருத்துவர்கள், பொறியாளர்கள் எல்லாரும் சேர்ந்து கொண்டு தொல்காப்பியத்திற்கென்று மன்றம் அமைத்து நடத்தி வருகின்றார்கள். அதோடு மட்டுமல்லாமல் நமக்கு இங்கே நடைபெறக்கூடியதாக இருக்கக்கூடிய தொல்காப்பியர் தமிழ்ச்சங்கமம் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய ஒரு நல்ல சங்கமத்தினுடைய வளர்ச்சியிலே அவர் பெரிதும் ஆர்வம் கொண்டிருக்கின்றார். நம்முடைய கல்லூரியிலே ஒரு 35 அமர்வுகளுக்கு மேலாக அது நடைபெற்றுக் கொண்டிருக்கின்றது. அந்த அமர்விலே அவரே நேரிலேயே உரையாடி இருக்கின்றார். அவற்றை எல்லாம் உலகம் எங்கும் கொண்டு செல்லக்கூடிய வகையிலே இணைய வழியாக கொண்டு செல்லக்கூடிய உன்னதமான பணியையும் செய்யக்கூடியவர். அது மட்டுமல்ல, யாம் பெற்ற இன்பம் பெருகை வையகம் என்று சொல்லுவார்கள். சங்க இலக்கியம் சொல்லும் போது செல்வத்தினுடைய பயன் ஈதல் என்று சொல்வார்கள். அவர் இங்கே பார்த்தபோது நம்முடைய கல்லூரியிலே சிறந்த மாணவர்கள் இருக்கின்றார்கள். அந்த மாணவர்களுக்காக உதவி செய்ய வேண்டும் என்பதற்காக ஒரு பெரும் தொகையை கொடுத்து அதை நீங்கள் வைப்பு நிதியாக வைத்துக்கொண்டு அதிலிருந்து வரக்கூடிய வட்டியை வைத்துக்கொண்டு இங்கே இருக்கக்கூடிய ஆய்வு மாணவர்களுடைய ஆய்வு சிந்தனையை வளப்படுத்த வேண்டும் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய வகையிலே ஒரு மிகப்பெரிய ஒரு ஆய்வு நிதியையும் ஏற்படுத்திய ஒரு பெருந்தகையாளர். அத்தகைய பெருந்தகையாளர் இன்று வந்திருப்பது மிகவும் சிறப்புக்குரியதே. தொல்காப்பியம் சரி, திருக்குறளும் சரி, பெண்மையை போற்றும். பெண்ணின் பெருந்தக்க யாவுல என்று சொல்லுவார்கள். அந்த வகையிலே இவருடைய புதல்வி நம்முடைய தமிழகத்திற்கு பெருமை சேர்க்கக்கூடிய வகையிலே, கொங்கு மண்டலத்திற்கு பெருமை சேர்க்கக்கூடிய வகையிலே உலகளாவிய பல போட்டிகளிலே கடந்து கொண்டு நல்ல விருதுகளையும் வெற்றிகளையும் பதக்கங்களையும் பெற்றுக் கொள்ளக்கூடிய ஒரு உன்னதமான பெண்மணியாக திகழ்கிறார் என்பதும் நாம் இங்கே மகிழ்வுக்குரியது. அத்தகைய பெருந்தகையாளருடைய குடும்பத்தார் அனைவருக்கும் நம்முடைய வாழ்த்துக்களை தெரிவித்து இன்றைய உரையை அவர்கள் தொடங்குமாறு கேட்டுக்கொள்கின்றோம். இந்த நல்ல நிகழ்ச்சி ஏற்பாடு செய்த அன்பர்கள் அனைவருக்கும் நம்முடைய வாழ்த்துக்களை தெரிவித்து நிறைவு செய்கின்றோம். போற்றியோம் நமசிவாய. வணக்கம் நிதி ஐயா.
போற்றியோம் நமச்சிவாய.
போற்றியோம் நமசிவாய.
வணக்கம் ஐயா.
வணக்கம் வணக்கம்.
ஆரம்பிக்கலாங்களா?
ஆரம்பிக்கலாங்க.
தவ திரு சீர்வளர் சீர் அடிகள் பெருந்தகை அவர்களின் அருளாசியுடன் இந்த நிகழ்ச்சியை நான் தொடங்குகிறேன். வணக்கம், நன்றி. Good evening to everyone. Can you all hear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Okay, let me start sharing my view graph first. Okay, the topic for the day is computing and communications. Like what Adigal Perundagai just said, the communication and computing has become essential part of our life. And today's topic is, like all other presentation went ahead before few days, for the last few days, this one may not be more technical in the sense it may not talk specifically about any one particular thing, but it is more of looking back into what happened to reach where we are here today. You know, with the COVID-19, we are all isolated, or we are all homebound, or more or less jailed. And the only way we can communicate with others, also to conduct business, to learn, to interact, to order things, you name it. For everything, you need communications. So this communication has become so important in our life, and it will remain as such forever going forward. So there is no ifs and buts. So given that importance of communication, so pervasive in our life, so we have to look back at what happened and how these things were developed. That is the focus of my topic today. Basically, we are going to look at the history behind the development of computing and communications, and where we are and where we may go. So why I chose this topic, computing and communications. Computing is part of communications. Current communication systems cannot be like what it is today without computing. So both computing and communications go together, or they are part of DNA. And looking back at this, how these things developed over nearly a century plus will give us some perspective, because there is a famous saying, you have to know the history. If you don't know your history, you won't have history. You won't be part of any history. That is true not only for any individual family, any community, any language, or any society, or any country. So we have to know what had happened so far. That is history. In Tamil, they used to say Anubhavam. So we have to look at the Anubhavam that will give us lessons in terms of how we achieved this kind of progress. Did we make any mistake, and how we corrected, and what are all the good things happened so that we can use that in future. So history is very important for anyone and everybody. That's why I chose this topic, to give a perspective so that you understand how these things progressed, how thousands and hundreds and thousands of, or even millions of people put their time and effort and brain to create systems which we are enjoying today. Okay, let me give one simple question I will ask you just for a couple of seconds. You can think about that, and then we will. I will answer that. Just imagine how much it costs to make a long distance call. Say from first time when the network was ready, from New York to San Francisco in US, it is like close to 3,000 miles. AT&T company at that time just made that line possible. And that line had basically from New York to San Francisco, there are 130,000 poles they have to erect through desert, mountains and everything. And they strung a copper wire. And first time people are able to make call from New York to San Francisco. Just imagine how much it costs for 3 minutes, just 3 minutes from New York to San Francisco. Can you guess? Just guess a number, okay? All right, right. You know how much actually it costs? It cost 21 US dollars in those days. That was the first time in 1915. After adjusting for inflation today, it will be approximately $550. Or if you convert that to Indian rupees, it's like 41,200, at least approximately 41,000 rupees to make 3-minute phone call from New York to San Francisco. I'll tell another experience in my own life. When I was a graduate student in Colorado in 1990, that time I can make calls to India through AT&T network from Denver region. So you know how much it costs for 3 minutes? The first minute it will be $2.25 and subsequent minutes $2.15. Basically, it's like $6.50 for 3 minutes in 1990. My graduate student's salary at that time was around $900. So it's a big amount to talk to say India like for 20 minutes. And today's dollar value for that $6.50 is at least $13 and rupee wise close to 1,000 rupees. So now we are all sitting in Zooms through cell phones or your laptops connected to the Zoom. Can you guess how much you may be spending approximately? Maybe few cents, or in Indian rupees, 1 or 2 rupees per minute. So what it shows is within close to 100 years, the technology progress had made the cost of communication so cheap, almost nothing. And it is so prevalent. Those days, talking from New York to San Francisco, there's only one line, and there is no, like, millions of people cannot talk at the same time. So within 100 years, you can see that now several billion people all around the world can talk to each other. They can chat each other. They can send text message each other. All these things happen. So how is it possible? There is something behind that keeps all these things going on. So that's the communication. That is the effect of computing and communications in our life today. Okay. So now, and if you look at the human progress, like 18th and 19th century, what happened is so-called industrial revolution. That time, people concentrated on using energy efficiently to move things. For example, the first biggest achievement was discovery or invention of development of steam engine by James Watts. He developed the steam engine at the time, and immediately it found a lot of applications, especially in United Kingdom, for a lot of mills, like flour mills, steel mill, all these mills. Those days, they didn't have a good machines. So this became as a blessings for them. And there are 3 other important things with steam engines which made people connected all around the world. One is the train. We used to have a steam engine even in India till I think maybe 10, 15 years back. So that was one of the fundamental transportation media for throughout the world, where people can go long distance, goods can be carried. The same thing, the steam engine was used in ships to sail throughout the world. So steam engine became one of the biggest change in our life. The second thing is electrical engines, electrical motors, all these things. Even to get electricity, you need steam engines, or part of the electricity was produced using steam engines still today. So that is the industrial revolution. 20th century, move to 20th century, what I call, it's called computer and communication and computer revolution. So this is where all the communication development happened. Before that, we didn't have much communication. We used to send letters and that's it. Even that has to go through some maybe a train or some transportation. But 20th century, we have this revolution from communication and computer, which created automation in so many areas, simple transportations, everything represented in digital representation and information sharing. And 21st century, the next century, or the current century where we are living, this may be called information revolution, where data science, knowledge, and inference will be taking place. But for all these things, the fundamental catalyst is information-centric world is computer and communications. And on top of that, building applications like data science, artificial intelligence, robotics, everything. So that's why the importance of communication for our current standard of living is so important. So given this background, this is the outline of my talk today. Some brief history about telecommunications, history of computing, and current status. Finally, I will touch on what the future holds for us. Okay. Now, when I talk about communication, actually, it's more appropriate to say telecommunications, because communication is much broader and we are not going to cover everything. Even within this telecommunications, it's not possible to cover within like 1 hour what are all the things happened. The same is applicable for computing. So I work in Bell Labs. Okay, so let me give some background that will, I think, put proper perspective for the history of both computing and communications and its importance and the vital role played by Bell Labs, where I am I'm one of the researchers currently. Bell Labs, when you say Bell Labs, it is named after a person called Alexander Graham Bell. He was one of the very famous inventor like Thomas Alva Edison. And let me give a little briefing about him. From childhood, he was very curious. And he self-taught a lot of things himself. And he was in Scotland, England. And his mother is a deaf person, not originally. At the age of 12, his mom started slowly deaf. Basically, he couldn't hear. So what happened, he was so worried and he was so interested how to help mom. She is becoming deaf. So what he did, he dropped out of high school. It's not that he is not very bright, he's very bright, but in high school, he concentrated only on interesting subject. At that time, it was biology, and he didn't do well in other subjects. So he dropped out from a good school. Then he came and started helping his father and mother. So since he was so enamored by mother's situation, first he developed a language to communicate to her from any language like English, Latin, or any other language, how to communicate her, because she cannot hear, right? She cannot hear the voice. So he used the sign language. He himself developed a sign language and helped her. So that's the first. Then he wanted to help deaf people as much as he started a helping center, school, all that for that. Then what happened is that tragedy happened in his family. His brothers died and all that, and his family moved to Canada and started living in Canada. From there, he grew and he learned, and he joined Boston University. He started doing research, and that's where he developed several things. And let me just there also he was so concerned and so touched by deaf people. He married a graduate student who is deaf. Okay, he's very very curious and very inventive oriented. So during his stay in Boston, he worked with another colleague. First time he developed a telephone. Okay, telephone is, and in those days, there is no system where you can speak and that will be converted into electrical signal and it will travel to some distance, and the other end people can get the sound back. It's a big thing in those days. That time they had only telegram where you can send by Morse code. So he came up with this and immediately started a company called Bell Telephone Company in 1887. And he started selling telephone. And he also established a lab called Volta Laboratory in 1880 to do experiments. And this Bell Telephone Laboratory became AT&T, and the Bell Labs is the research wing of AT&T is named after his name, Bell Labs. That's why the Bell Labs is. And some of the notable inventions of Graham Bell's include photophone. You know, we are talking about wireless today. He is the one who first demonstrated the wireless communication. But to surprise, it is not the radio waves which he used. He used the light. He converted sound into light and sent it to some distance, and the other end they received the light and they were able to listen. That's the first wireless communication in the world using light. But of course, the current wireless communication, everything is radio waves, not the light. Okay. He also he also invented three other things I'll quickly mention. Metal detector in 1881. What happened is the US president at that time, Garfield, was shot, assassinated, and he had bullet inside his body. So people wanted to find where the bullet is. He invented a metal detector to find the metal inside the body. Also, in 1885, he developed a gramophone. Thomas Alva Edison in 1877 first invented the gramophone, where you can record the voice like music and listen to it later. He did it with tin foil, but that is not reliable. So what Bell did is he changed that. He came up with a wax surface, and which is very smooth. That's how the current gramophones. Of course, I think most of you may not know what gramophone is. It is a black disc where you used to basically record music and sell it. People can listen to that. And it was in use even like maybe 15, 20 years back, but it is no more. It's like a museum piece now. And final one is audiometer, how to measure the sound. He came up with the audiometer. You know, nowadays, if you are an electronics and communication students or anywhere else, maybe the sound is always measured in audible, and a unit called decibel. The bell in the decibel is named after him, because he came up with the unit to measure the sound. So this is a great person, and that's the name our lab is named after. Now, current Bell Labs, I'll just tell you. The original Bell Labs was with AT&T, and the AT&T created Lucent in 1990s, and the Bell Labs went with that. After that, Lucent merged with Alcatel, French company, Alcatel Lucent, and we were part of that. and Nokia bought Alcatel-Lucent recently. So now Bell Labs is part of Nokia. It's called the Nokia Bell Labs. Okay. That's the background. Now, Bell Labs, what did Bell Labs do for communication or telecommunications and computing? I will show you a couple of slides, and then you will see and what are all things we did Bell Labs was started in 1920 in New York and moved to New Jersey in 1940s. And this slide, I don't know whether you can see completely. It's a little bit crowded and dense. And I will just go through some of the important things. For each color-coded things like from bottom, television, radio, cell phone, music, internet, space, phones. These are all the areas in which our invention from Bell Labs changed everything. For example, so I will go through some of the significant discoveries because we cannot talk about all these things. There are too many to name here. And similarly, I will show you another slide here. This is the same slides in a slightly different format with its little more information. If you look at that 1920s, a lot of progress, a lot of inventions in material science, 1940s solid states, which is the semiconductors, and 1950s light waves and microwaves, so on. And also Bell Labs is not only the engineering, marvel of engineering and inventions. Bell Labs produced so far like 13 Nobel laureates, or more than 13 Nobel laureates. We have, actually there is one Nobel laureate, which was awarded in 1918, not shown. Actually, it's interesting that the Nobel Prize was awarded in 1918 for Arthur Ashkin in our lab. He's retired now. You know for what? It's called the optical tweezer. He demonstrated how you can isolate live bacteria using a laser. So that became so useful. It was done in 1997, but he was awarded Nobel Prize in 2018. But you know the use of optical tweezer now? It's one of the fundamental things used in all this research in virus. You know what, with the COVID-19, all this research, discovery of medicine, everything, you cannot do it without the optical tweezer or variants of this. That is one of the fundamental use of like optical tweezer, where you can trap virus, you can trap bacteria, and once you trap, you can look at it and you can understand how it behaves and all sorts of things. So this is the point I'm trying to make, is all these Nobel Prizes are not like just getting Nobel. Each one had fundamental use throughout the world. For example, if you look at the transistor, which was discovered in 1936, that is the fundamental unit in any electronics you touch today, no matter what it is, or almost everything you touch. Everything has a transistor. It is like a cell in our body, or it's like a brick in a building. Without transistor, solid state transistor, all these modern electronics won't be there. That is the importance of the discovery that changed the world forever. And similarly, there are so many things along this line, each discovery. And I will come back to transistor later. Okay, so the point of this is that Alexander Graham Bell, he always worked on problem which will help solve people's problem, which will help people improve people's life. That is the motivation behind, should be the motivation behind any research or any invention. And that is always the motivation of Bell Labs. We always work on problems which will be helpful in solving some fundamental problem, like in communications or computing. Okay, and I will come to the I will come to this a little bit later about computing. But now let's look at this, how the history of computing or communication evolved. Let me give a little bit milestones along the way. Okay, so this slide, if you look at that, this is about computing hardware, how computing system progressed. I'm showing only the hardware side, and we can talk about the software a little later. But there are a lot of efforts for nearly 200 plus years in trying to do computing using machines. Okay, the earliest attempt is Charles Babbage. He's considered to be a father of computing, and he developed a system called the analytical engine in 1822. What it does is basically it will try to do an integration or differentiation. That's all he does. It's a very simple device, and it's just a concept. And so later somebody developed this, and there are a lot of attempts after that. It's not that then people tried to improve that. And for example, in 1928 to 31, Vannevar Bush, who was a chairman in MIT, he developed what is known as differential analyzer. That's the picture of this. That's a machine. Basically, it can solve differential equations, a small number of differential equations with very few variables. And in 1930s, Konrad Zuse in Germany, he developed a system called the floating point binary mechanical system, which is programmable, and you can feed instruction from film. These are all the huge development in those days. And around the same time in our Bell Labs, Stibitz created the first digital computer using just the relays, electromechanical relays. This is called the model, started with model K. You know the model K, it means he developed that in his kitchen, in his house one day. And his wife said, oh, let's call this model K. That's how he first developed that relay computer. And then, of course, it improved over time from 1937 to 1946. The picture above is Model 5, which was used and commercialized. And after that, the first electronic using solid state, like after transistor was, not a transistor, it's before transistor. So first digital binary computer was using electrical devices, all electrical devices, is first invented or first developed in 1939-1940 by Atanas Sapp and his graduate student Charles Berry in Iowa State University. The history, there is a lot of controversy about that. You will see everywhere in the internet, it was developed by McAuliffe. It's called ENIAC, but that is not true. Actually, he kind of stole the idea from this gentleman, Atanas. But anyway, so, and after that, once the transistor was invented, then everything changed from vacuum tubes, mechanical relays, everything. And the first semiconductor transistor-based computer was developed by IBM in 1959. It's called IBM 1401. Before that, they had electromechanical devices and using what is known as vacuum tubes. But this is the first computer with the transistor, and it had like 16,000 characters as memory, and it used to take 460 milliseconds for adding 2-digit numbers. And it had a punched card as input, and the instructions are just 6 bits. And of course, they sold thousands of computers in that time, thousands of machines at that time. And it was a huge success. And this picture shows how it used to look like. Now, coming back now, if you want to talk about computers, we talk in terms of supercomputers. The current supercomputer in the world is in Japan. It's called the Reiken Fagu. It is no more like a single computer. It's not a single chip computer. Usually the supercomputers are like it has hundreds of thousands of processing units, especially this particular one. has 158, almost 159,000 Fujitsu 48-core CPUs. Each CPU chip has 48 cores, and there are nearly 160,000 such CPUs. And it has like a memory of 4.85 petabytes, okay? And it can compute 488 petaflops per second. Petaflops is, we will come to that a little later. So this is a picture of that computer. To run this computer, you need a huge power plant. It's like a huge hall, you need that. But this is the progress we have made in terms of computing. And this picture shows that is the whole system. But if you look at the chip, single CPU kind of thing, how it has progressed, the current powerful engine I can call is NVIDIA graphical processing unit. The current one is called the Ampere 100. That unit, this is the picture of that. It is not just like single CPU, but it's kind of it's built onto a card, and which has so many new technologies. The semiconductor is made of 3D structure. The memory is on top of each other within a single wafer and all that. And it is built on 7 nanometer chip. What is 7 nanometer? 7 nanometer means that is the size of one transistor in that chip. That particular chip has 54 billion transistors in single chip, okay? And it can deliver 19.5 64-bit floating point operations, teraflops, 19.5 teraflops of 64-bit floating point operations, and it can transfer data at the rate of 600 gigabytes per second from this GPU to outside world. And memory bandwidth from the processing unit to the memory. And from the GPU to outside world, it can transfer like 1.6 terabytes per second. So that is the progress we have made since 1940 when the transistor was invented. Now we have in a single chip billions and billions of transistors providing so much computing power. Okay, so to give a perspective of what is nanometers, it's a semiconductor technology where they make chips using that. And the current transistor size is approximately that's a 7 nanometer chip. It is basically size of the transistor. And what is a typical atom size? It may be from 0.1 to 0.5 nanometer. And typically the COVID virus we have is close to 120 nanometer. Actually, it is not 120 nanometers. If you add the spikes, which is projecting outside the COVID virus, that adds 40 nanometers. The core of the COVID is only 80 nanometers. So these transistors are so small, and they are reaching a stage where I think they are going for something else from now on. So the idea behind this is that the simple discovery like transistor, which enable the solid state circuits and which enabled computing to progress. See how much progress we have made within a span of nearly like 80 years. Okay, and coming back to communication systems. So you know that Alexander Graham Bell in 1876 demonstrated using telephone to talk to each other. That was in 1876. And slowly the progress happened. And like the phone used in those days, that's a picture probably you cannot see properly. But the lot of progress, almost everything happened in our lab, all these systems you see here. And in 1965, we developed the first electromechanical switch using solid state. That's called 1ESS, which had 65,000 subscribers. Simultaneous calls can go through. And in 1982, what is known as 5ESS, it's a huge computing machine. Okay, It's all made up of Unix operating systems, and it had 100 million lines of code. And it took nearly 20 years in Bell Labs to develop. And one of the beautiful thing about this machine is reliability wise, that downtime, that is, the system cannot go down more than 2 hours in 40 years of working. So if it runs for 40 years, maximum it can go down only for 2 hours. That is the stringent reliability. That's how the software was developed. That's how the hardware was developed, with such a high reliability in mind. And the reliability concern was so important, and it helped improve other areas like in satellites, in nuclear control systems, everywhere. Reliability is so important, but the reliability incorporated in 5 ESS became one of the cornerstone for developing systems which are reliable. But of course, now these wireline systems are no more. They are getting obsolete, and everything is cell phone now. Okay, so that's how the communication technology progress. Why I showed the traditional, the wireline communication systems here is because all these cell phone networks, development, all these things relied on the wireline systems in the beginning. Now it's all internet. You don't need 5 ESS. But the early development of all cell phone systems, they basically piggybacked on these wireline systems. Only the last mile, the cell phone, the radio waves is used. The rest of the system used to go through these wireline systems. But now they are all decoupled. Now everything is through IP networks. I'll come to that later. Okay. Now, not only this, in terms of software development, Bell Labs contributed so much, starting with Unix and C language in 1960s, C++, and there are a lot of software tools like Make, Lex, Yak, and there are so many other languages were also developed in Bell Labs, C++, you name it. All these things were the fundamental things in the internet of today. Basically, if you take internet today, or take the Linux operating system, where the Unix and Linux operating system, which controls all the internet. Okay, even the code written in like 1960s are used in internet routers today. Okay, your cell phones. All your cell phones, either iPhone or Android phone, everything, the operating system inside is a variant of Unix, Linux operating systems, basically. And the technology, semiconductor technology, the processing, everything because of the semiconductor invention in Bell Labs. So whatever you touch today, there is some invention from Bell Labs. And it will continue for forever, I think. So, and with that, and let's see. Yeah, the cell, as I said, the wireless communication also progressed from the first wireless discovery of Jagdish Chandra Bose and Marconi in 1984. Also Nikola Tesla in 1891. The wireless, basically communication through radio waves or microwaves and radio waves, progressed slowly. And it reached now, that is the main medium of communication for us, at least for the last mile. Okay, so without wireless communication, without cell phone, I don't think what we will be able to do today. I think everybody will be depressed if you don't have cell phone at this time, I think. And I said the Bell Labs contributed so much to computing and communications. I'll also mention few other important things happened in Bell Labs, how these things progressed. One is data networking. You know, the data network, internet and all that we have, but the Bell Labs used to, Bell Labs developed first long distance remote operating computer in 1940s. They had a computer in New York, and from New Hampshire, using teletypewriter, they can connect to it and run these things. Digital, it's signal into digital format and communicating through copper wires. And of course, I mentioned transistor. And you know, the cellular telephone, which we are using today, the first network was developed in 1947 in Bell Labs. They are the one who came up with the idea that you can put cell towers all over the place and you can transfer calls from one cell tower to other cell tower when people move transparently. That's how things happen today. When you talk and you keep driving, or when you going in a car or a train or plane, not plane, bike, your call continues, right, from one cell tower to another cell tower. The connection is maintained transparently without any break. That's what it does. So that kind of architecture and technology was envisioned in 1947 in Bell Labs. And of course, there are a lot of radio technologies. Now we have all these generations, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and all that. These are all the technology used to how efficiently we use the radio frequencies to transfer information from one place to another place. And another thing, in 1954, we put together solar cell, and it was used in first satellites called Telstar in 1962. That's a solar cell invented in. And now all the background, the core network communication is through fiber optics, and laser is what used to send data through fiber optic cables. And laser was invented in 1957 and made it practical. Of course, there is also co-inventor of laser, but Bell Labs also showed first time that you can use laser to send data. And communication satellite, I said that it was launched at Telstar from Bell Labs in 1962. And of course, I mentioned Unix and C operating systems. And there are so many other discoveries, and they received a Nobel Prize. For example, first transatlantic telephone cable from New York to London in 1956. And evidence of Big Bang. There is always noise in the background from outer planets, outer stars, and that was discovered in 1965. That is the fundamental discovery with which our wireless communication is so clear now. They know that there is a background noise always in radio communications, and how to get rid of it. That discovery made that possible. And of course, there are so many other things. And I said that the last one is like Arthur Ashkins, who did the optical tweezer. And another thing, in 1969, a couple of Bell Labs scientists, they discovered what is known as charge-coupled device. Now, if you look at all the cell phones, all the digital camera, everything, it uses the technology called a charge-coupled device to store light as digits inside your computer. That's the image, and then you can use that to manipulate and create whatever the quality you want, whatever the resolution you want. But the first idea that when the light comes from the camera lens, how do we store that as electronic digits? That's the technology they came up with. So the Bell Labs, yes, of today has more than 34,000 patents and so many discoveries, and that's a contribution of Bell Labs for the computing and communications. Without these discoveries, we won't be here today. Okay, now what is the communication systems of today and tomorrow? The current communication systems, you can divide that into two parts. One is the wireline part, and another is the wireless part. The wireline part is mostly using fiber optic cables for the center of the core of the network, and also from home to the central office, we use either copper, or some places we use fiber optic cables. That is the wireline technology that will be used today, or either like you have the TV cables, coaxial cables. That's again copper. So these are the things for last mile. But the inside the network, the core network, everything is through fiber optic networks. Okay. And for example, our researchers recently in Bell Labs, they demonstrated that you can send 100 petabytes of data in using lasers in a single strand, basically single strand of fiber. You can send this much data. And also for the last mile, there is a new technology called the XDSL, where you can, through the twisted copper pair, you can send even the gigabytes of information from your home to the central office. In fact, that was developed my colleague next door to me, and it basically brought the life of twisted pair of old days copper wire into life, and it's one of the dominant technology now. On the wireless side, the radio waves, as I said, there is a 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and so on. This is basically, this technology is what we call last mile technology. That that means is, from your cell phone, you connect to the rest of the network using radio waves. So that's what it is. And that G all means generations, basically second generation, third generation, and so on. Currently, the fourth generation and fifth generation are, in fact, to some extent, still there are some places where we have 3G network. And in the 5G, what the 5G, the current and future looking is, the high frequency, we will get high frequency, and we will have very high data rate bandwidth. You may get 50 megabits or even gigabits of bandwidth from your cell phone, and which will have very small latency, like in the order of few milliseconds. And the idea is that we will be able to connect tens of billions of devices, including cell phones, a lot of IoT devices, such as fridge, home alarms, your watch, you name it. All these devices will be connected through wireless 5G technology. And for example, even now, today, the smartphones around the world, we have 3.5 billion smartphones. Approximately 45% of the world population has smartphones. But if you take all the cell phones together, 62% of the people have cell phones. And as I said, imagine, not that everybody will be talking at the same time, but at least even if you assume like a 20% of the population talks at the same time, how much bandwidth is needed and what are all the things going on in the background to make sure that everybody instantaneously hears and instantaneously sees their text message or video chat or whatever, okay? So much is behind it, which are completely transparent. And all these things happening because of the network. I will show you now. So in this slide at the bottom, there is a network picture. I think you may not be able to see the complete things, but still let me go through this. There are a few things here. Massive scale access. As I said, billions of devices will be accessing the network. That is where the access points are. From there, they will be concentrated, and there will be cloud computing. It's called the edge cloud, which will make the connection much more flexible and efficient. From there, everything will be transferred through fiber optic cables to the other end. And from there, it will go to the other end of the conversation or communication. And the network will have a lot of capabilities inside, basically. It will have a lot of flexibilities. It will have programmable or operation systems, and it will have cognitive functions to make smart decisions and also dynamically change the network and allow a lot of vertical applications to be easily integrated into the system. And on top of that, there will be dynamic security. This is the currently evolving future network. And so this network is what will keep us connected going forward. And let me see how much time we have. How much time we have? Let me see. The time is 6:30.
So you can proceed, sir.
How much time we have? Maybe another 15 minutes?
Yeah, sir. Yeah, sir. 15 minutes. You take.
Okay, good. Okay,
Okay,
let
thanks, sir.
me, okay. Now, as I said, this is the currently evolving network, and this network will enable what I call fourth industrial revolution. What do you mean by fourth industrial revolution? This industrial revolution, basically, it's more of information revolution. That's what, and computing wise, there are three areas you can look at that, this fourth industrial revolution. One is the industrial automation. Basically, there will be pervasive robotics, internet connected device or internet of things devices connected via 5G network, and the core network is basically fiber optic communications, so that you may be able to do operations sitting in, say, for example, Coimbatore. A doctor in Coimbatore may be able to operate people in New York in real time with full complete control, and seeing everything like in front of that particular doctor with such a high bandwidth video communications. That's one example. You students, all you students and others right now, we are using Zoom, right? So this is going to be the future now, given this COVID kind of situations where people are isolated, and we want to have a remote education system, remote everything, right? So we need a very good bandwidth. Right now, what we have is not that good, right? Still, even in the beginning of this session, when Dhanapriya introduced me, the packets are dropping, and we couldn't hear what she is saying at some point, right? That is the nature of communication system now. So this has to be improved. If you want to have seamless communication, this has to be improved. And that's the only way forward is using 5G networks, which is evolving, which will give you connectivity and provide a lot of bandwidth, so that you won't have this dropped packets or dropped calls, all these things. And this is not only for communications, for everything. There will be robots running around in a factory. They all will at least locally communicate via 5G network. So likewise, everything in your house, right? Like your fridge, your microwave, your radio, your TV, your phones, everything will be interconnected, and they will be using like 5G kind of last mile technology. The second thing, in computing front, we are reaching a saturation point in semiconductor technology. The current semiconductor technology is 7 nanometer, and the next will be 5 nanometers. And after that, it's impossible to make semiconductor with a much smaller technology. The reason is we are reaching the transistor right now, for example, which is approximately 7 nanometer. 7 nanometer means, if you look at that, the atom size is anywhere from 0.1 to 0.5 nanometers. So there are basically 14 or 70 atoms put together to create one transistor. Okay, that's the size of transistor. With 5 nanometer technology, it will be shrunk further. Very few transistor will, very few atoms will be in a transistor. So what it does is, there will be a lot of quantum effects at that level, where you cannot have a stable circuits. So you cannot shrink the semiconductor beyond like, at least as of today, beyond 5 nanometer. So what people are contemplating, or there is also a lot of research going on, is quantum computer, where now we can deal with individual atoms, instead of the individual atoms to do the computing. That's a quantum computing. So what it will do is slowly evolving, and it will augment the current computing system, which are based on the traditional integrated circuits. So the quantum computing will be part of this. The quantum computing provides so many advantages. One is it can be quite fast, and because traditional computer, if the single bit, basically single bit, is either 1 or 0. That's all. It has only 2 states. Whereas in quantum computing, the bit is called qubit. You can get 2 states simultaneously. That means depending on how you are looking or how you are measuring, it can be 1 or 0. So both 1 and 0 can be detected at the same time. That means if you look at the 16-bit computer now, it is like 32-bit computer, or it is so it's much higher actually. It grows exponentially, basically in power of 2 over the current binary system. So that, with that, not only that, it will be much faster, and you can do a lot of computations, which the traditional computing machine takes days or weeks or months to compute. That will be part of computing system. And the third is everything will be knowledge based. The systems will be knowledge based, and all the services will be knowledge based. So for that, to enable that, the current artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data science, all these things will be part of that. So that's where we are going. That will be part of our life. And with that, I want to just say a couple of words, and I am open for question and answer. The concluding remark is the students there, how are you going to prepare yourself? That's the question everybody should ask, because the world we are living today has changed, and it will be permanent in several ways. The social interactions we had so far has changed. We may not have similar interactions. The governing systems will be different. Globalization will be dominant. Privacy and individual rights may not be what we have now. So there will be change in everything. You name it. Medicine, everything. Education, everything. So how are you going to prepare for that? You have to think through that. How are you going to take advantage of internet and available facilities? Like if you want to develop software, there is something called GitHub, where there are so many free software is available. If you have any doubt in developing software, say, be it Python, Java, or C++, anything, if you have a doubt how to write this program, how to solve this program, there is a website called stackoverflow.com. If you go there, you will see so many solutions. Sometimes you may get the code there, simple snippets. And if you want a full systems, there are people who develop code and they make it free. It's like it's in GitHub. Similarly, if you want to understand some concepts, there are places like medium.com who make it simple to understand. Of course, there is a YouTube and a lot of other online sites where you can learn programming. You can solve problems. You can develop systems. You can even create businesses by collaborating with others. So that's where we are, and that's what you should take advantage of. And with that, I'm completing my presentation, and I'm open for questions. And you can send the questions either via chat, or you can raise your voice and ask the question straight. Anybody has question?
Excuse me, Kailvali?
Sir, I think no more questions are here, sir.
Kailvali? Just you ask.
Sir. Yeah, sir.
Ask Swamiji for blessing.
Okay, sir. So now I'm okay, sir.
Just before the question and answer.
Swamiji. Before that question, sir.
Yeah.
Before we start the questions, I request Swamiji to give us some feedback of this section.
திருச்சிற்றம்பலம். போந்து எம் உயிர்க்குயிராம் துணையொத்த சாந்தையர் தம்பதம் எந்து கருத்தே. Thank you, Dr. Nidhi. Till now, you are giving a very good elaborate description about the history of this communication development and also modern trends in the computer field. We are very thankful to you. Not only you give simply you give the speech, you give many PPT presentations also. It is very useful to the students, not only to the students but also to the faculty members, those who attended this session. We are very thankful to you, sir. We always welcome your participation in our seminars like this. Thank you for your presentation. Convey my wishes to your family members. Potriyom Namah Shivaya.
போற்றியோம் நமச்சிவாய. வெரி ரொம்ப மகிழ்ச்சி சுவாமி. And everything, hope everybody enjoyed this and they got something out of this. Yeah, definitely I would like to join and help as much as I can for the students, so that our faculties, and if they have any doubt or if they have any question, they can approach me, and I will try to be helpful as much as I can. So
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Swamiji, for your valuable feedbacks. Now I wish to call up, sir.
Small announcement. Just a minute.
Yes.
Sir, Dr. D, sir.
yeah.
Sir, your presentation is so informative, sir. It was excellent presentation. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your information, sir. Dear participants, okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So, dear participants, tomorrow our final session will start at 10 a.m. So we will share feedback link in chat box at end of presentation. Participants, those are attend more than 5 sessions, are eligible to get e-certificates. And we send the e-certificates to your registered email. Thank you. So tomorrow our webinar session time is 10 a.m. So all are requested to join the webinar and enjoy the sessions. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Have a nice day. Have a nice day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Now I wish to call upon Ms. Vishalachi to deliver a vote of thanks from our college.
Good evening to all. I am honored and lucky to have the opportunity to give a vote of thanks on this special day. I thank for our college giving me the opportunity. I would like to thank our respected Swamiji as well as our secretary and beloved principal Dr. Tamilselvi ma'am. I express my heartfelt thanks to our chief guest Dr. Nidhi, research scientist, who graced us with her thought, provoking us to set a perfect time for our college. I would like to thank Head of the Department Computer Science, Mr. Karnanidhi sir, their organizing team and staff members. I must not forget to the thanks and students teams who contributed to organizing this webinar. Once again, thank you very much to all for making this event a success. Thanks for coming. Thank you all.
Thank you, Vishalachi. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dear participants, you may leave on the session.
கைல்வெளி ஒரு நிமிஷம். பங்கேற்பாளர்கள் கவனத்திற்கு. நமது கல்லூரியும் தினமணி நாளிதழுடன் இணைந்து நடத்தும் 5 நாள் இணையவழி தேசிய கருத்தரங்கம் 13ஆம் தேதி முதல் 17ஆம் தேதி வரை காலை 10 மணி முதல் 11:30 மணி வரை சாகித்ய அகாடமி விருதாளர்களுடன் சந்திப்பு என்ற பொருண்மையில் நடைபெற உள்ளது. அது சமயம் சாகித்ய அகாடமி விருது பெற்ற 5 படைப்பாளர்கள் நம்மோடு நேரடியாக இணைந்து தனது படைப்பு அனுபவத்தினை நம்மோடு பகிர்ந்து கொள்ள உள்ளனர். அது சமயம் அனைவரும் கலந்து கொண்டு சிறப்பிக்க வேண்டுகிறோம். மேலும் நமது தமிழக அரசும் மருத்துவத்துறை வல்லுநர்களும் இந்த கொரோனா தொற்று காலத்தில் அனைவரின் மனநலம் பேணுதல் அவசியம் என்று தொடர்ந்து வலியுறுத்தி வருகின்றனர். அவ்வகையில் நமது கல்லூரி அதீனத்தின் சார்பாக தினமும் காலை 6 மணி முதல் 6:30 மணி வரை இலவச யோகா பயிற்சி வகுப்பு நடைபெற்று வருகிறது. அதற்குறித்த நிகழ்வுகள் நீங்கள் உடனுக்குடன் தெரிந்து கொள்வதற்கு chat பகுதியில் வாட்ஸ்அப் குழுவுக்கான இணைப்பை பகிர்ந்துள்ளோம். அக்குழுவில் நீங்கள் இணைந்து கொள்வதால் தினமும் நடைபெறும் யோகா பயிற்சி வகுப்புகள் குறித்த கருத்துக்கள் உங்களை வந்து சேரும். தினமும் காலை 6லிருந்து 6:30 வரை இந்த ஜூம் ஐடியில் நீங்கள் இணைவதன் மூலம் நேரடியாக யோகா பயிற்சிகளை பெற்றுக்கொள்ளலாம். அதில் முடியாதவர்கள் அதற்குரிய யூடியூப் சேனல்களுக்கான பதிவு இருக்கிறது. அதில் கலந்து கொள்வதால் தினமும் நீங்கள் யோகா பயிற்சிகளை செய்து மனநலம் அதிகப்படுத்திக் கொள்ளலாம்.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll talk to Dr. Karnanidhi a little later. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.